Hi, everybody. Today we are going to paint this, 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 and this. And for that, we will need paper, pencil, sharpener, eraser, watercolors, brushes, something to mix the paint, water, and a cloth. So today we are going to paint a few more animals, and we will start with the horse head. It's similar to the one that we did a few weeks ago, only that this time we will add color. Actually, we'll be gradually adding color as we move through each exercise. So we start with a basic sketch. It's simple, it's easy, it's fast, and even if you're not confident in your drawing skills, I'm sure you can follow these steps. To make sure it's easier for you to see, I'll be using a Sharpie to outline my sketch. See, it's very straightforward. Now transfer your sketch to the paper and let's begin painting. First, I like to add a light wash to the background to prevent it from being stark white. This is optional, but it adds visual interest. You can speed up the drying process with a cloth or a hair dryer, and once the background is dry, you can move on. But make sure it is completely dry before continuing, because the colors might mix and blur the edges, and you don't want that, okay? Then we will outline the edges and fill them in with color. Keep the shape simple and the edges sharp. It's as simple as that. So to make things more visually interesting, I'm adding a bit of red, which will give the composition some warmth. And don't worry too much about the texture. The paint itself will create the beautiful texture that you see as it dries. And that's it. We have our first composition. Okay, so now let's move on to our second composition, a bull. We'll begin by sketching a simple shape, and it is nearly an abstraction, okay? But this shape is just the guideline for our composition. The color and texture will bring everything to life. Once again, I'll start by adding some color to the background just to avoid plain white canvas. Once it's dry, I'll start painting the bull. Okay, so not every exercise will work out as planned, and in this case, I'm not entirely happy with how it turned out, but that's okay. It's all part of the learning process. Sometimes it goes right, sometimes it doesn't, and that's it. But we must keep on practicing and experimenting, okay? So here is our second composition. Now let's try something different for our third composition, a fish. We start with a simple S shape, then you add a D shape for the body, and that's it. With those two shapes, you already have your fish. I'm going to use a Sharpie to outline this sketch for clarity. Now transfer the sketch to the paper, and I stained already the background with a darker color to make the main subject stand out. Once it's dry, I begin painting the fish. Once again, I'm not 100% happy with the results, and that's part of the process. Embrace your mistakes as part of the process, okay? They are essential to learning. After drying, I decided to add a touch of red to warm it up and harmonize the colors. I'm using a larger brush here with just water to smooth out the transitions. Sometimes it's just okay to cover up certain areas if you're not satisfied. And here is our third composition. Next up, let's create something simpler, a cat. You can start by drawing a D-shaped base, and it doesn't get much easier than that, does it? As usual, I am going to stain the background with a light color, and once it's dry, I begin painting the cat. This time, I am experimenting with a multicolored approach rather than just using a single solid block of color. So the key here is to make sure that all the colors that we use are harmonious with one another. Notice how simple the shapes are. It's just triangles, lines, and simple details. There's really nothing complicated here. Once finished, we can add some more details for interest. And I decided not to include the eyes, but you can always add them if you like. And that's our fourth composition. Now let's make something fun, a chicken. We start with a circle, divide it in 3 parts, and use the lower 2 sections for the body. And from there, add the rest of the details. It's that simple. Once it's on paper, I stain the background lightly. And once again, this step is optional, but it helps to add visual interest. Once again, I'll add more than just one color to this composition. So I start with a blue as a base. And once it's dry, I add the main colors of the chicken. I use a cloth to speed up the drying process, but be careful if you do this, okay? Because it can easily leave unwanted stains, and you don't want that, do you? After the base layers dry, I add some warm colors, using a watery brush to spread the paints and blend the tones. The blue underneath provides more depth to the piece. Lastly, I add some details, including some splatters for texture. And there we have our fifth composition. Finally, let's make a dog. We start with simple shapes to outline the dog's body, and once you got the basic form, you can add curves and details for the face, tails, and legs. It's really that simple. I have already sketched and stained the background, so it's time to paint. Rather than just using brown for the dog, I have mixed in a bit of blue to give more character. When working with watercolors, you can control the color's intensity by adjusting the amount of water. More water makes it more translucent, and more layers of colors will intensify the area. And there you have it, our sixth and final composition for today. As always, the key here is to keep on practicing. Don't be discouraged if things don't always turn out perfectly. Keep on practicing and you'll continue to improve, okay? As always, keep on practicing and thank you for joining us.